is Stephanie, and welcome to my first video in my new series, A Year in the Garden of Eaton, where I will take you on a journey through how I plan my garden, how I start my seeds, how I grow my plants, and how I eventually harvest them and cook them and eat them. I do call my garden the Garden of Eaton because I do prefer to grow edible plants, although I do grow some flowers and ornamental plants as well. This month is January. We're here in the middle of January. I live in southeast Michigan, where it is typically cold and dingy and gray, and there's not a whole lot of gardening to be done. Often the ground is frozen. It's usually covered in snow, although it doesn't happen to be today. So really all I can do in January is dream about what summer will be like and what types of plants I'll be able to grow in the summer. And so what that means for me is planning out what new seeds I want to buy and what new plants I want to buy. And I have big visions of what's going to happen in the summer. Now, in all honesty, I don't actually need any new seeds. I have a whole box of seeds right here. This is my whole seed box. It's pretty full of all types of flowers and vegetable and herb seeds. But then the seed catalogs start coming. And there's one in particular that gets my attention every year. And that's this one, the Baker Creek Heirloom Seed Catalog. And it catches my attention because I really like how the pictures are laid out in the descriptions. I always say, well, I don't need any new seeds, but I'm gonna look through it anyways and pick some out. And so when I start looking through the seed catalogs, I have to think about what really can I grow where I'm located, again, here in southeast Michigan. The first thing I think about is what types of plants do I want to grow? As I mentioned, I typically grow edible plants. I balance out what types of edible plants I want to grow by looking at things like, what do they taste like? If I don't like to eat it, I'm probably not going to grow it. I also think about what type of a yield will I get. Oftentimes I forego things like cauliflower and broccoli because they're very space intensive and I have a small amount of space. And so I want to maximize the yield that I get. I also like to grow things that are fun and unique looking. And that's why this seed catalog gets me every time, because they always have something new, something interesting that I've never grown before. So once I know that I'm pretty much looking for edible seeds and edible plants, there are a few factors I need to consider, because almost everything will catch my attention. The first thing that I consider when I see an advertisement for a seed that I might like to try to grow is what is the USDA plant hardiness zone in which that plant grows best. The USDA plant hardiness zones are a way of classifying different geographic regions based on the minimum temperature achieved in winter, essentially what type of low temperature can be expected. Here where I live in southeast Michigan, our plant hardiness zone is zone 6A, which means we get a minimum temperature of -10 to -5 degrees in winter. And so anything that I grow, if it will be a perennial, meaning it will come back year after year after year, will need to be able to withstand that low of a temperature. So I can grow anything that grows in zone 6A and lower. So I could grow something from zone 5, zone 4, zone 3. That's what pertains to perennials. So things like bushes, hedges, trees. I would love to grow a banana tree, but that is a much more tropical plant that grows in a higher zone where there's not such a risk for freezing temperatures in winter. Another thing I consider with regard to temperature and geographic region is the growing season. Here, the last frost date is typically around May 15. And if you want to be guaranteed of not having frost, you usually have to wait until about June 1. Likewise, our earliest frost date towards the end of the growing season is around October 15. But to be on the safe side, you better plan that you can get frost as early as October 1. This means that my growing season for plants that cannot withstand a frost at all is really only about 4 to 5 months. And so very often you will see an indicator on a seed packet of how many days it takes until blooming for flowers or for production if it's some type of an edible plant like a vegetable. And so if it says 90 days, I can grow that here. If it says 180 days, I can grow that, but I might need to get creative with starting my seeds ahead of time. And I actually do start all of my seeds ahead of time in my basement here so that I can extend that growing season. The next thing I think about is how much space do I have available to grow the types of plants that I will want to grow. I live on about 1/10 of an acre, a plot of land that's just over 1/10 of an acre. That doesn't account for the space on the land that's taken up by the house and the garage and other structures. And so I have very minimal space in which I can plan out my garden. I like to think of myself as a farmer Stephanie, but really I'm just a vegetable gardener. And I have to get creative about how I use my space. I do this by growing things that would typically grow out, like vining plants such as cucumbers or tomatoes. I grow them up on trellises. I also sneak some prettier looking or more ornamental type of herbs into my front-facing or public-facing landscaping. I also have to consider that because I am growing things up, I have to be careful of growing plants where the fruit itself would be too heavy that it would fall off the vine before it would ripen. This would apply to things like pumpkins, watermelon. I tend to avoid growing those types of plants because I would have to let them grow on the ground so that the ground could support the weight of that plant. And then it really just takes up too much space for it to be worth it for me in my limited available space. Because I'm using my front-facing space creatively and sneaking my herbs and maybe lettuces or greens into that front landscaping, looks do matter. And so I do put some priority on choosing a plant that might not have quite as much yield or may not taste quite as good, but has a much better visual appeal. And then finally, I consider what seeds do I already have and what don't I have. At this point, I have created a pretty exhaustive seed bank. I have a wide variety of tomato seeds, cucumber seeds. For the most part, I don't need more of those types of seeds. And so I try to buy something that's new or unusual. It might be a seed packet that I picked up on clearance the previous fall or winter. It might be something a friend gave me to try, or it might be something that I purchased from a seed catalog, such as this one. So once I have a general idea in my mind, typically, of what types of new seeds I might want to look for or try, it's time to consider buying the seeds. I don't actually plan out my whole garden in January. This is just the time of year where I like to think about what could be, and I do usually try to place my seed orders early. This is so that if I am buying something rare or unusual, I get my order in before it is sold out. Additionally, this year, because of a growing interest in gardening as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, a lot of seed companies are having problems keeping up with shipping orders. The orders do eventually go out, but I just like to put my order in early so that I know that I will get what it is that I tried to order. And so I do, as I mentioned, I believe, try to limit myself to no more than 5 new varieties because I have so many seeds already. So that's my limit to myself, is no more than 5 new varieties. And so I did place an order a few weeks ago, and it came in the mail earlier this week, and I've been waiting to open this because every order that you place with this company that I selected, Baker Creek, they send a free seed packet, and it's a mystery, and so I'm excited to see what my mystery seeds are. It's usually some type of a lettuce or a green, so I'm hoping it's something that I don't already have, but we will see. Maybe it will be something different. I don't think it's a bean seed. Bean seeds are pretty big, and so I have been feeling it like a kid before Christmas, and I don't think it's beans, but we'll see. And so let's see what I picked out to try to grow this year and what my mystery seeds are. Alright, so this is the first type of seed that I selected to try to grow. This is a Kajari melon, and this is somewhat like a honeydew melon, I believe. They're a sort of a new variety that Baker Creek has been offering out of India, and I'm really excited to try this because it looks like, from my research, the weight of the melon is small enough that I can grow it on a trellis, and I won't need any kind of a net or a support under that growing melon to keep it from falling off the vine. Plus, it looks pretty cool with that orange and green. And so I'm really excited to try these. This is my next variety that I selected. This is called Chinese tricolor spinach. It's actually not a true spinach. It's an amaranth. Amaranth is a plant that's typically grown for its edible seeds. But in this particular variety, it's grown for the leaves, which have been advertised as tasting like spinach and being able to be cooked and utilized like spinach. I eat a lot of salads, and we put a lot of spinach in our salads. Typically, I haven't had good success with spinach because it bolts, it goes to seed when the weather gets really warm, and then the leaves get bitter. But this supposedly will not bolt when the weather gets very warm, and so I'm really excited to try this and see if this might be a better substitute for homegrown spinach in my environment and my growing season. This is my next variety of seed that I picked out. This is the Helotros cucumber, or the large Dutch yellow cucumber. I mentioned earlier that I don't need any new cucumber seeds. I have a good bank of cucumber seeds, but this is something that's been in my wish list on the website for quite some time. I'm always interested in growing plants that have a tie to the Netherlands because of my own Dutch heritage. These also come very highly rated. They are said to be very productive, and I think that the yellow color will add a nice splash of color to our salads that are typically green. And so I'm really excited to try these. Another seed that I selected to try is the cucamelon, or the Mexican sour gherkin. This is, again, something that I've been wanting to try for a few years and just haven't. And so I decided this is my year. I'm going to try to grow these cucamelons. These are actually a gherkin. They're related to cucumbers, but they're a little bit different. And these supposedly are very small, and they taste like a cucumber with a little bit of a citrus flavor, a little bit of a sour flavor. I'm thinking that maybe these will make good pickles, and so I'm very excited to try these. And then my fifth new variety is the cardinal basil. I did run out of basil seeds last fall. I used up the last, so it was time to buy new basil. Typically I grow purple basil, but this variety has been bred or perfected to maximize the flower heads on the basil. And so I'm thinking that this will be good to sneak into my front landscaping and add some visual interest with some purple flowers, but also give me some basil. And so I'm excited to try these. And then my free seed variety. This is a Japanese giant red mustard, and so it is a green. I have mustard green seeds, but I do not have red mustard. And so anything I don't already have is always a win in my book. And so we'll see if we can try these this summer too and see how these turn out. So what else am I up to here in my Garden of Eden in January? Not a whole lot because of how cold it is outside. It's too early really to start most seeds, especially for the types of vegetable and fruit plants that I tend to grow. I might start some flower seeds in the next month or so, but there is one thing I'm really excited about. I watch it every day, and that's because I'm starting my sweet potato slips. These are sweet potatoes that I grew last summer, and when I harvested them, they were too small really to be worth cleaning off and eating. And so instead I saved them through the fall and early winter to grow new sweet potato plants from. And so I just stuck these toothpicks in them, and I put them in this jar of water, and they start to grow roots off the bottom, and they start to grow this greenery out of the top. And so eventually this greenery is what I will pluck off and plant in dirt and grow as a small sweet potato plant. I start these pretty early. They're probably too early if you were to read most official gardening texts. But I like to start them early because this is one way that I maximize the growing season. Again, here in Michigan, the growing season is too short to grow these. If I were to just immediately plant these and try to grow them, you need a long, hot growing season. And so I'm trying to get a couple months head start and getting some nice, good-sized sweet potato plants to plant when it gets warm enough that the plants can survive and it's not too cold. The other thing that I'm doing is I'm starting to set up a seed starting room or nook in the basement. And so maybe come back on in February and we'll check out how I have my setup for starting my seeds with my lights and my heat lamps and all, and heat pads and all of that. Thank you for joining me, and I hope I'll see you for the February edition.